Deathbringer here. Get my t-shirt below. Guaranteed to raise your charisma by at least +1.
We review Tiny Dungeon 2E today on Dungeon Craft. Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor DungeonMaster, and this channel is about playing the ultimate game of D&D and other tabletop role-playing games.
And I'm Deathbringer. Level up your game by subscribing and click the bell icon so you'll be informed when we upload new videos every week.
On the Dungeon Craft Facebook group and on Patreon, I am frequently asked, Professor, what is the best role-playing game to introduce children to role-playing? And of course, I love Dungeons & Dragons, but my favorite pick for introducing kids is called Tiny Dungeon. This compact little book is super versatile, very easy to understand, and a character sheet can be put on a single index card. It's the perfect introduction for children to the world of role-playing games. If you've never seen a Dungeon Craft review before, I only review books I really like, and I don't always do it in a timely fashion. Tiny Dungeon has been out for a while now, but it is a great book, so I want to make sure everybody knows about it. I really like to share smaller games with a wider audience. So let's take a look. This is Tiny Dungeon by Alan Barr. It is hardbound, 200 pages. It is not stitch binding, but it looks pretty sturdy to me. It's got a very convenient size, great cover art. There are no charts on the inside cover, which I prefer, but that's okay because we're not going to need them, because once you've read this game, you're pretty much going to understand just about all the rules. How to play. It begins with the basic mechanic, which is tests. When you want to do something, you tell the Game Master what you want to do, and it's generally a standard test. A standard test means you roll 2 6-sided dice, and if you get a 5 or a 6 on either die, you succeed. This would be a success. You only need 1 success. Now, the Game Master may decide you have disadvantage. Maybe you're unskilled at that activity, or you don't have the proper tool, in which case you only roll 1 die, but that would be a success. Now, sometimes you are really skilled at an activity and you have advantage. That means you roll 3 dice and you only need 1 success. There is no such thing as having more than 3 dice in the game. So if you're a sword master, you're going to be rolling 3 dice. And if you're unfamiliar with a weapon, you'd be using 1. Obstacles are anything that requires a test. We have save tests, they're saving throws. Combat, very simple. Initiative is determined by rolling 2 dice, adding them together. Players, including the Game Master, take their turns from highest to lowest. To attack, you make a successful test, usually with 2 dice, but if you're an expert at that attack, you roll 3. On a successful hit, like that's a successful hit, you'd score 1 point of damage to your opponent. There are 2 special actions, evasion and focus. Focus means you skip your turn, and on the next turn, you succeed on a 4, 5, or a 6. Evasion means you test with 1 die, and if you get a 5 or a 6, you ignore all the damage from the previous round. On top of that, there are optional rules such as zones. This probably looks familiar if you're a longtime watcher of Dungeon Craft. We have 3 zones: close, near, far. So this would be completely compatible with ultimate dungeon terrain. Hit points. When your hit points run down to 0, you have to essentially make a saving throw or die. There are 2 types of spellcasters. We have spell readers who read scrolls, and the spell touch. These are traditional wizards. And when the spell touched want to cast a spell, they just describe the spell they want to cast to the Game Master. And generally they make a standard test, and if they get a 5 or a 6 on one of the dice, they're going to succeed. This is a great system for children because they're not confined by predetermined versions of what spells should be, like magic missile or a light is a 1st level spell or a fireball is a 3rd level spell. Kids can cast any spell they like if the Game Master determines that spell is really hard to cast or maybe too powerful. You can always make them cast at disadvantage. Children love to freeze things into solid ice, and they love shrinking things and like into bug size and stepping on them. I also once played a convention game with a little girl and her dad, and the little girl wanted to be a princess wizard, and she used a rainbow sword. So this game allows children to engage on their level, use their imaginations, and make up anything they want. Experience points is an optional rule, and instead of gaining levels, you gain additional traits, which I will explain. You have the traditional heritages, they're called in this game: humans, fae, which are elves, dwarfs, Goblins, Salamar, which are like kind of salamander creatures. Tree folk, Karhu, which are bears. You can see one on the cover. And the lizard folk. They've got a great Don Bluth kind of animated look. What is that movie? The Black Cauldron. They've got that kind of look to them. And you might say, hey, Professor, I thought you don't like cute anthropomorphic animals in Dungeons & Dragons. I don't in my own personal Dungeons & Dragons game. Personally, I think they're too cutesy, and the game is kind of evolving into something that's a cross between Dark Crystal Thundercats and Kung Fu Panda. But for little kids, I think it's neat and fun, and so I don't mind them here. The traits are very clear. There are only a few lines. Sneaky. You gain advantage when testing to hide or sneak. Very clear. Tough. You get 2 additional hit points. An entire character could be put on a 3x5 index card, and you could just write down what these traits are and refer to them, and you never need to open the book. There are optional rules for tracking items. That's something you don't necessarily want to do in a game for kids, but the rules are there if you want them. We have this convenient chart with how to create a monster. So here are the threat levels: fodder, low, medium, high, heroic, and solo. Solo would be something like a dragon. It's a lone monster that everyone's got to team up to defeat. But fodder, you could see, only has 1 hit point, so they go down with a single shot. This is a really convenient guide for creating your own monster, but they do include lots of examples. Some of them are even on the dark side, like cultists and cult leaders. Eldritch horror. Giants, gnolls, spiders, krakens, necromancers. So you could have a grim, dark game if you wanted to with this very rules-light system, but it's also child-friendly. There are lots of dinosaurs. Probably more dinosaurs than I've ever read described in any book. And they're wonderfully illustrated, and each does a unique thing, like tail swipe. On a 2d6 success, all adjacent enemies are knocked back 15 feet, and all their tails are different. Like a stegosaurus will do damage. So I think that's really cool. I like the idea of monsters that have effects other than just doing damage. We have optional rules including new prestige traits, animal companions, which is another thing children love. More focused schools of magic, so you could be an emerald magician or a diamond magician. Different types of martial arts. Optional combat rules like variable weapon damage and armor and damage reduction. And then we have a convenient adventure generator. If you've watched Dungeon Craft, you know I love these, and this is a very good one. The rest of the book consists of micro settings and adventure material, and they demonstrate just how versatile this game can be. Raptorland is kind of like Land of the Lost or the Gendy Tartakovsky cartoon Primal, which is awesome. Courtesy of Goblins is very much in the style of Labyrinth or The Wizard of Oz. The Savage Seas of Zankara is very Conan-esque. The Land of Roses and Thorns is based on Game of Thrones. It actually just comes out and says that. So really versatile. You can do a lot with this game system and really make it your own. And that's Tiny Dungeon. It's really ideal for young kids, and this is why. To roll a 20-sided die for a 5-year-old to look at the number 17, it takes a few seconds to register. But for children just rolling these dice, they'll be able to recognize a 5 or a 6 pretty quickly. That's one of the reasons I use these dice and not the kind with pips, because for adults, when you see that pattern of the 4 or the 6 or the 5, you're so used to it, you instantaneously know what it is. So I recommend these dice that show the numbers for small children. That will help them recognize their numbers. In summation, Tiny Dungeon is a terrific little game. I highly recommend it for young children. It gets the big Dungeon Craft thumbs up seal of approval. If you have any questions about Tiny Dungeon or want to share your own experiences, you can put them in the comments below. Also below, you'll find a link to the Dungeon Craft Facebook group and Patreon, where you can download a copy of my house rules called Deathbringer, as well as a link to my module Macbeth, available on questgivers.com. And for more great Dungeon Craft tips and reviews, click right over here. I'll see you soon. May all your rolls be 20s.
Deathbringer again. I once wrote a children's book. It was called Goodnight Doom. I don't know why Scholastic rejected it. But anyway, buy my t-shirt at the Dungeon Craft store.